The American Civil War, a nation divided. The American Civil War, fought between 1861 and 1865, remains one of the most significant and transformative events in United States history. It was a conflict born of deep-seated disagreements over the institution of slavery and debates surrounding the rights of states versus the authority of the federal government. This war, fought between the Union in the North and the Confederacy in the South, tore the nation apart but ultimately laid the groundwork for fundamental political and social change. This script will guide you through the Civil War's causes, notable events, and enduring legacy. It will shed light on how this era shaped not only the political landscape of the United States, but also its social fabric, influencing the trajectory of civil rights and democracy. The roots of the Civil War can be traced back to the very foundation of the United States. As the North and South evolved differently economically and culturally, tensions grew. In the North, industrialization created a diverse economy with less reliance on agriculture. Meanwhile, the South's economy centered on large-scale agriculture, particularly cotton farming, which was sustained through the labor of enslaved people. Slavery was not just an economic issue, but also a moral and political one. While abolitionist ideas strengthened in the North, the South remained committed to maintaining its way of life. At the same time, debates over states' rights became increasingly heated. Southern leaders argued that individual states had the authority to govern themselves, including decisions about slavery. Northerners, however, saw this as a challenge to the unity of the federal government. Legislative compromises, such as the Missouri Compromise of 1820, attempted to maintain a balance between free and slave states, but these only postponed the inevitable. Events like the Compromise of 1850 and the Kansas-Nebraska Act reignited debates, creating deep-seated tensions as regions fought over expanding slavery into newly acquired territories. The divisions reached a boiling point in the mid-19th century. Court decisions and political events added fuel to the fire. The 1857 Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court, which denied African Americans the rights of citizenship, further polarized the nation. Meanwhile, abolitionist literature, such as Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, galvanized anti-slavery sentiment in the North. In 1860, the election of Abraham Lincoln as president became the tipping point. Lincoln, a Republican, was seen by the South as a threat to the institution of slavery, despite his assurances that he aimed merely to prevent its expansion rather than abolish it outright. Feeling that their interests were no longer represented, Southern states began to secede from the Union, starting with South Carolina in December 1860. By early 1861, 7 Southern states had formed the Confederacy, with Jefferson Davis as their president. Hostilities officially began on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces fired upon Fort Sumter in South Carolina. The nation, previously held together by fragile compromises, was now fully at war. The Civil War was marked by several significant battles and turning points, which shaped not only the outcome of the contest, but also the direction of American history. At the outset, the Confederacy secured key victories, including the First Battle of Bull Run in July 1861, boosting the South's morale and proving that the war would not be the quick conflict many had anticipated. In response, the Union implemented the Anaconda Plan, a strategic effort to encircle the Confederacy by controlling the Mississippi River and blockading southern ports. This plan aimed to suffocate the South's resources and limit its ability to trade goods with foreign nations. One of the most important milestones came in 1863 with the Battle of Gettysburg. This 3-day clash in Pennsylvania marked the turning point of the war. The Union victory not only halted the Confederacy's advance into Northern Territory, but also demonstrated the resilience of Union forces under General George Meade. Gettysburg remains one of the most studied and remembered battles in Civil War history for its tremendous scale and stakes. Equally significant was Sherman's march to the sea in late 1864, led by Union General William Tecumseh Sherman. His campaign of total war involved destroying infrastructure, industry, and supplies in a swath through Georgia, aiming to break the South's will to fight. This strategy devastated the Confederate economy and morale. The war concluded at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia on April 9, 1865, when Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Union General Ulysses S. Grant. By this point, the Confederacy was exhausted and outmatched, unable to continue the fight. While originally framed as a war to preserve the Union, the Civil War soon incorporated a larger moral dimension: the abolition of slavery. On January 1, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This historic document declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were to be set free. Though the proclamation did not immediately free all enslaved individuals, since it applied only to the rebelling states, not the border states loyal to the Union, it fundamentally altered the character of the war. It reframed the conflict not just as a battle for reunification, but also as a struggle for freedom and human rights. Moreover, the Emancipation Proclamation paved the way for the enlistment of African Americans in the Union Army. By the war's end, nearly 200,000 African Americans had served in the Union military, fighting not only for the preservation of the nation, but also for a future that promised freedom and equality. The Civil War profoundly shaped the lives of millions. More than 600,000 soldiers lost their lives, making it the deadliest conflict in United States history. The toll was staggering, with countless families losing loved ones and entire communities forever changed. For civilians, especially in the South, the war brought immense hardship. Fields were destroyed, cities burned, and economic structures collapsed. Women on both sides played significant roles, managing farms, serving as nurses, and even acting as spies to support the war effort. In addition to the human toll, the war forever altered government and society. It reinforced the authority of the federal government over the states, answering questions about unity versus division that had lingered since the nation's founding. The Civil War's legacy is vast and enduring. The abolition of slavery was formally codified with the adoption of the 13th Amendment in December 1865, just months after the war's conclusion. While the war set the stage for Reconstruction and attempts to rebuild the South, it also introduced new challenges, particularly the implementation of civil rights for newly freed African Americans. Though progress was made during the Reconstruction era, many of the promises of equality went unfulfilled for nearly a century, as systemic racism and segregation persisted. However, the war fundamentally shifted the national dialogue, and its impact on the civil rights movement of the 20th century cannot be overstated. The Civil War also reshaped how Americans viewed their nation. It affirmed the United States as a single, unified nation rather than a collection of sovereign states. Additionally, it inspired ongoing debates about freedom, equality, and the balance of power between states and the federal government. The American Civil War was far more than a military conflict. It was a battle for the soul of a divided nation. By examining its causes, key events, and lasting legacy, you can better understand how this remarkable chapter in history shaped the United States that we know today. From the struggles over slavery and states' rights to the human cost of the war and the post-war pursuit of equality, the Civil War remains deeply relevant. Its lessons continue to remind us of the importance of unity, the sacrifices required for justice, and the enduring fight for a more equitable society.